On a warm, glowing afternoon in the heart of the financial district, sunlight spilled through the tall glass windows of the prestigious Calderon Hotel, casting sharp reflections across polished marble floors. The grand banquet hall buzzed with confidence, elegance, and the quiet arrogance that often follows people who believe they already know everyone who matters and how the world works. Yet, among these sharply dressed executives and high-ranking guests, a man named Marcellus Grant stood quietly near the corner, effectively invisible to the very people who, unbeknownst to them, depended entirely on him. He arrived early, wearing a slightly worn, but meticulously pressed, navy suit and carrying the calm dignity of someone who had learned, sometimes painfully, how to survive and conquer judgment. But nothing, not his past, not his years of struggle, could have prepared him for the humiliation he was about to endure, or how the daylight outside would soon feel painfully brighter after the darkness that crept into the room. If you believe that arrogance must meet consequence, and that true power lies in dignity, please hit that subscribe button. Your choice ensures the voices of those who deliver silent justice are heard here on Chroma Chronicles. Marcellus had attended the high-profile luncheon with an intentional, unassuming presence. He moved quietly, offering small nods and soft smiles, careful not to disturb the ecosystem of inflated egos around him. The executives of Warren and Creed Holdings were there to celebrate the near signing of a massive $600 million partnership deal. The company they were merging with, a firm anonymously known as Gentry Dynamics, was rumored to be led by a mysterious, reclusive owner who rarely showed up at public events. What absolutely no one in the room knew was that Marcellus himself, standing in his plain suit and gentle manner, was that owner, the silent force who held the final, crucial signature. Nobody looked twice at him. Across the room, Charlotte Hale, the confident, sharp-tongued director of operations, was already irritated by the sight of him. She viewed people through the lens of net worth and perceived status. She didn't like when unimportant guests stood near the premium tables, especially when they didn't look like they belonged. Her friend and colleague, Trent Verdon, a tall, charming man with an ego polished enough to reflect the ceiling lights, joined her in noticing Marcellus as the waiters prepared to refill glasses for the upcoming toast. Afternoon light gleamed across Charlotte's expensive wine glass, as she smirked and whispered, too loudly, that someone dressed like that must have wandered in from the staff lockers. She didn't know Marcellus had heard her every cruel word cutting through the background noise. She didn't care if he had. She didn't notice the way he lowered his gaze to hide the instant, sharp sting of embarrassment. Marcellus had known judgment his whole life, from the years he spent in a struggling neighborhood to the days he worked late shifts as a janitor while slowly, meticulously building the quiet empire that now financed half the deals being celebrated in that very room. But no achievement could fully erase the memories of the past. He still carried every bruise of every assumption people made about him, based on nothing but superficial appearances. He mentally recited the complex, multi-billion-dollar figures currently sitting in his own accounts, contrasting them with the cruel, small-mindedness he was witnessing. The irony was suffocating. When Marcellus accidentally stepped back slightly, a single, small misstep, and bumped the corner of Charlotte's chair, she stood abruptly, feigning exaggerated shock and offense. Trent burst into loud, obnoxious laughter, his polished face lighting up with mean amusement. And without a moment's hesitation, fueled by instant, irrational arrogance, Charlotte reached for her half-full glass of expensive red wine. She lifted it with a wide, artificial grin and tipped it over his head. Warm, dark red wine dripped instantly down his forehead, across his face, staining the worn navy suit and pooling onto the polished marble floor. Gasps erupted around the room as the color stained his clothing, and a profound, burning humiliation coursed through him, hotter than the summer sun beating outside the windows. Charlotte laughed a sharp, high sound of triumph. Trent laughed even harder, holding his stomach. A few people tried desperately to hide their amusement behind napkins and hurried whispers. For one tiny, cruel, unbearable moment, Marcellus became a spectacle, a grown man soaked in wine in broad daylight, surrounded by strangers who openly pretended to be his superior. He swallowed hard, fighting the surge of blinding rage. He remembered every moment in his past when dignity had been violently taken from him, every time he had stood utterly powerless in front of mockery. He knew this humiliation was designed to make him small, to confirm their prejudiced worldview. But Marcellus was no longer powerless. He simply straightened his posture, closed his eyes for a brief, silent breath, and walked calmly toward the restroom. He made no eye contact. He delivered no threat. He just walked away, and his silence was heavier than any shout. The room murmured, the laughter dying quickly under the weight of the undeniable cruelty they had witnessed. Most felt guilty for having laughed. Most didn't. Inside the opulent restroom, As he wiped the wine from his face with cold paper towels, he looked into the mirror at his reflection, the same reflection he'd seen for decades. A man who wasn't loud, wasn't flashy, didn't fit into their arrogant mold, but also a man who had built a company worth hundreds of millions from nothing but sheer resilience and tireless work. He whispered to himself the same phrase his grandmother used to say, "Don't let their blindness make you lose sight of yourself." He did not feel rage. Rage was inefficient. He felt a deep, cold certainty about what had to happen next. He knew, with absolute clarity, that the professional futures of Charlotte Hale and Trent Verdon had just been irrevocably destroyed. If this moment of profound injustice resonated with you, and you want to support the truth, please take a moment to comment below and tell us what you would have done in Marcellus's place. An hour later, when all the executives were seated, Charlotte and Trent sitting confidently in the front row, unaware that their laughter earlier would soon echo back at them in a way they never expected, the room brightened. The hotel staff closed the grand doors. The CEO of Warren & Creed, Leonard Bryson, took the stage and cleared his throat nervously. Today was the big reveal of the mysterious owner of Gentry Dynamics, the man they needed to impress, honor, negotiate with, and respect. "It is my profound honor," Leonard announced, his voice trembling slightly, "to introduce the brilliant mind behind Gentry Dynamics and the driving force behind this $600 million deal. Gentlemen, ladies, please welcome Marcellus Grant." The room erupted with confused, stunned whispers. Trent froze instantly, his polished facade cracking. Charlotte blinked rapidly, her confident smirk evaporating as the name registered. And then Marcellus stepped into the spotlight. He wasn't wearing a fresh suit. He was wearing the same navy suit, still damp, stained with the dark, dried reminder of their cruelty. Sunlight from the tall windows washed over him as he approached the stage with a calmness that silenced the entire hall once more. He didn't look angry. He didn't look vengeful. He simply looked, profoundly, utterly disappointed. And in the context of high finance, disappointment from a man holding $600 million is far heavier than rage. Marcellus took the microphone. He didn't point anyone out. Instead, with a voice steady as a river, he began to speak not about mergers, but about character. "The greatest asset any company owns," he said, his eyes scanning the crowd, resting momentarily on Charlotte and Trent, "is not capital. It is the dignity and respect we afford to every single person we encounter, regardless of what they wear or which door they walked through this morning." He spoke of humility and the profound responsibility that comes with power. He spoke of how true leadership wasn't defined by appearance or status, but by fundamental kindness, especially toward those who appear unable to offer anything in return. Every person in the room shifted uncomfortably, realizing just how painfully his words fit the scene that had unfolded an hour earlier. Charlotte's hands trembled violently in her lap. Trent lowered his gaze to the floor, his face pale and sick with dawning realization. Marcellus concluded his short speech with a gentle nod. He then made the decision a decision purely about stability. The deal went forward, not because Marcellus needed them, but because thousands of employees depended on the financial stability it would bring. But his grace, even after the public humiliation, became the sharpest weapon. His silence was the loudest accusation. "We believe in consequences." If you want to witness more stories of immediate professional payback against the arrogant, please share this video now with your colleagues. As Marcellus left the hotel that afternoon, he walked away as a reminder that dignity shines brightest in the daylight, especially when the world tries to dim it. If you or someone you know has faced professional arrogance like this, submit your story to Chroma Chronicles. Your anonymity is guaranteed, and your truth will be heard. The next day, Charlotte Hale and Trent Verdon were called into the CEO's office. Leonard Bryson didn't need to ask what happened. He had seen the stained suit. He had heard the speech. He knew the cost of associating with such petty, cruel arrogance. The professional humiliation and subsequent firing of both Charlotte and Trent served as the only necessary retribution. Marcellus never asked for it, but his dignity demanded it. The silent shame of the arrogant was the true price of the $600 million deal. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into the moments where arrogance meets its swift, professional end. For more chronicles of ultimate payback, click on the video now showing the inheritance deception for another story of evil defeated. Thank you for witnessing this powerful story. This is Chroma Chronicles, signing off.